I'm so excited today. Vera is here. Her and I connected recently in an online business context. And when I heard her book title, The Wordz We Wear, How to Show Up with Confidence and Create Your Best Life, I was like, oh, I need to know more about her. So first, welcome, Vera. I'm so happy you're here.
Thanks for inviting me, Jacqueline.
I also want to point out when I say the words we wear, the words is spelled Wordz or Z, depending on
Yeah.
where you're listening. We are both Canadian. I live in the States now, but I speak American and Canadian. The right way to put it. I have so many questions that I want to chat about, and we'll get to the book and the content of it. Words are so important, and I love that I'm talking to someone who loves words probably more than I do. But I want to back up to your childhood memories. Diving into the book, I saw you have some memories of hiding, lots of don'ts. You found peace and comfort in books. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was born with what they called a birth defect, a congenital defect that meant one of my legs didn't grow properly. So by the time I was 8, I had a 4-inch leg length difference, and I had my first surgery at 8. So it was basically a heart bypass surgery, which meant I was restricted from doing almost anything. And books became my retreat, books became my activity. And I hid in them because, of course, when you're a child and you're in and out of hospitals, you're not exactly the most popular person in the playground. So I just kind of buried myself in books and wrote a lot. I always had a notebook that I was writing in. I was a smart girl and did my homework quickly. So, in order not to have to do any other chores, I would flip a page and start writing and pretending that it was something that I had to do. So, yeah, between writing and reading, that was my childhood.
Yeah. What kinds of books did you enjoy reading, and did you enjoy writing the same kinds of things too in your notebook?
Interesting, I wrote a lot of poetry back then, and I had never read poetry. It's when I look back at this stuff, I think, wow, where did I learn about poetry? But I think there was just something about making words sound right that felt good. I read everything. The Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew. I loved mysteries and suspense. But I can remember going to the library and trying to take out Louisa May Alcott and Charles Dickens. And there was a new librarian there, and she says, "Oh no, dear, you're too young for those books." And I looked at her and I said, "I've already read them all." Um, because, like I said, reading is what I did. And I would sometimes have to learn to figure out how to pronounce words. Back then, we didn't have the internet. So I mispronounced a lot of words, but I would look them up in the dictionary. So it was just like I read because anything that would get me excited, anything that would make me think, anything that would help me, like Dickens, when you get into his rhythm, has a really cool rhythm. Like it can be difficult to get into the rhythm, but it's there.
Yeah. I love that. So from that age, did you grow up thinking, oh, I'm going to be a writer someday?
I always wanted to be a writer, and my mom and dad are like, you can't make a living doing that. So I didn't. I graduated at the top of the class in math and physics in the province of Alberta, actually. But girls aren't supposed to do math and physics. So I was talked into becoming an accountant. And that's what I did. I was articling for my CA when I had actually a head-on collision in my early 20s. And I was married at the time. I was a teen bride because the first person that asked me to marry him, I thought, oh my God, like because of my birth defect, I was not exactly swimming in self-confidence. And I thought, okay, I'm going to get married and everything's going to be fine. But it wasn't fine. So when I had the car accident and I realized my marriage wasn't working and I hated the work I was doing, I actually left everything. I quit my marriage, my job, my university degree that I was working on. And I said, that's it. And I walked across to the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology. They had a communication arts program, and I registered to start writing.
Wow. How old were you then?
My mid 20s, my
Okay.
early 20s, actually. I was 20, guess 22, 23.
Wow. That's amazing. So many people you hear about stories who they wanted to be a writer as kids, and then they don't really step into it fully till much later. But you had that nudge earlier.
Well, I had the nudge, and then even when I graduated from SAIT, it was like the opportunities to become a journalist, or what was the other one, a magazine writer. I had an opportunity to take a job for as a columnist on a magazine, a travel magazine. But they didn't, my mom and dad were right. They didn't pay. I couldn't even have paid my rent with either of those jobs. So I ended up actually taking a job with an advertising agency. And intriguingly enough, not as a writer, but as an account manager, because they looked at me and they said, "Oh, you've got these skills from an accounting and management point of view. You've got these skills from a writing point of view. You can bring it all together." And that's actually when I learned I'm left brain, right brain. So I didn't actually write for a living or even beyond, for publication until, well, years later, decades later, actually.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think a lot of people who are skilled in writing end up in those kinds of industries
Yeah, because
because
it's
they pay well.
communication, right? Yeah, it's money, and it's communication, and so it does feel good to still have your hands kind of where you're learning about the value of words and sentences and paragraphs and the psychology behind communication. I mean, all that has been really valuable.
Yeah, for sure. So the sparks for your book, The Words We Wear, when did that spark come? And I'm just checking the dates on the books you've co-authored. Did those come first?
The books I co-authored, I think one came before and one came after. That's a
Okay.
good question. Um, but it was all in and around the same period of time. I started writing, well, I mean, I've got boxes full of journals I've written my whole life. And I'm going to say the sparks for this book probably started in those journals, and they've probably been decades in the nutrition, if you will, the nurturing of it, because I've always been trying to figure out who I was and why I, as an intelligent person, was afraid to step into the limelight, and why so many other women I knew were pulling themselves back, trying to keep themselves small so they wouldn't, jeopardize their relationships or their families or whatever. And as a reader, of course, I was doing the reading associated with that. And then the career that I ended up, the businesses that I ran with my husband, I was a medical writer. So I learned to do a lot of research. So I did a lot of study of the brain and the psychology behind illnesses and mental illnesses and stuff. So the book was a culmination of years of stuff that was in my head. I like to say it was like a quilt. It's like there was this here and this there and that there. And it just kind of all started to pull itself together because I stopped work to have a knee replacement, part of my original issue. I've had 6 surgeries on my legs. And when I did that, I stepped out of the identity of being a vice president of strategy at the business. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? How do I feel? And I realized that a lot of what I was doing was wrapped around identity and how we feel with words. And the concept of Wordz We Wear came about because women women don't need 10 years of therapy. We don't have time for 10 years of therapy.
No.
But we have all these limiting beliefs that are based on what everybody else tells us. And the working title for my book was actually The Expectation Ceiling, because I believe we live up to the expectations that other people put on us. And we live down to the expectations that other people put us on us, as opposed to up to what we could do and want to do. So the words we wear was like coming from the aspect that words are labels. And as women, we know that clothes are labels, and we know how we feel in certain labels. We know how we feel in a little black dress, or our soccer mom outfit, or our high heels, or our business suit, our power color. We know that. And so if we understand that our clothing affects the way we feel, and that affects how we show up, and how we show up affects our decisions and our choices, well, our actions, behaviors, and choices are our identity. So if we can change the way we think about and talk about ourselves, we change our ABCs and we change our identity. And that's why it's called The Wordz We Wear.
Absolutely. So when I don't want to necessarily say discover isn't the right word, but had this spark for this, noticing the labels, was it something that you noticed with yourself first, or did you
Oh,
notice it with women around you?
Oh, me first,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, I think we all read, no, we don't all, but a lot of us write the book we need to write for, we wish we had read when we were younger, right?
Yep. Yep.
For me, it was definitely the realization that I had attached the identity defective to who I was. And I think that started when I left my marriage and I realized that I was more than just a girl with a physical handicap, that I did deserve more. But so many of the decisions that I made after that were still based on that inner belief that I was defective. Easy because I mean, I've got 2 feet of scars on my legs, and those are constant reminders. And my feet are two different sizes. So even just going out shoe shopping, and people would look at you and go, oh, like I literally had somebody tell me that I should cut the toe off of my big foot so that I could get both feet into the same size shoe. So
My jaw is on the floor.
I know, but so like you get these constant reminders that there's something wrong with you, and you don't get these reminders that there's something strong. An intelligent woman isn't something that's celebrated. What was part of my upbringing was this whole aspect of the defects. Like I had 4 surgeries before I was 18. I've had 3 more surgeries on my legs after that. And so you attach this consciously or subconsciously, and it becomes who you are. And so for me, it was like, okay, I attach that to my identity. I have to get rid of it if I'm going to become the person I am capable of being. And I have to get rid of the aspect that being an intelligent woman is bad because it's not. And I have to, there was all of these words, and I started saying, I literally sat down with this big spreadsheet and wrote down all the words I used to describe myself and thought, are there any of these that I like?
Hmm.
It's quite the exercise to do, Jacqueline. And
Yeah.
it's an exercise I do take people through in my workshops. It's like, let's look at the words. How many of them do you like? How many of them are neutral? How many of them make you feel good? And let's find the ones that actually allow you to step into who you are. So for me, being an introvert, the story I tell is when I was working at the ad agency in Vancouver, I'm an outdoors person. I love nature. Nature doesn't judge you, right?
Right.
And I feel grounded and loved in nature. So I came back from a weekend vacation and I was telling my coworkers what I was doing. And my boss comes in and he goes, did you just say you were camping in the mountains? And I went, yeah, it was great. And he goes, well, if you can camp in a tent in the mountains in the wintertime, I think you could bring a little bit more to your job. Why don't you bring that sense of adventure to work? And I realized then that I could be an introvert, but I could be an adventurous introvert.
Hmm.
And that adjective changed my life because it was like, okay, I need time to relax and to pull myself back together after I've been in a crowd or around a lot of people. But I am curious and I'm capable of learning and I'm capable of having fun and enjoying things. And so that became the word that I attached to how can I, if I'm doing something I don't like, how can I turn this into an adventure? How can I get curious? If there's somebody I want to know, how do I use my curiosity to get to know that person? If there's something I want to learn, how does curiosity or adventure help me to take that forward? And that, like I said, that changed my identity.
I love that. I see a lot of women and men too hide behind the label of introvert and use it as a limiter. So I'm glad you pulled that one out.
Yep, we use it as an excuse. And
Yeah.
it's so easy to use a label as an excuse.
Yeah.
But it's also, it goes beyond that. I mean, I saw it with kids, for instance. Like I say, like you call a little girl princess, it sounds so wonderful. But does she grow up believing she needs a knight in shining armor?
Right.
Does she grow up believing she can't get dirty? That she can't do things that get her hands dirty or that are sports oriented or that she can't build muscle? And if you celebrate a little boy because he's big and he's a little bullish and you say, hey, that's my slugger, does he then think it's okay to slug people?
Right.
Like we do this without thinking. We attach labels to people. How many people get called chubs or shorty or something like that when they're young? And then they've got body image issues.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. With so in your book, you have experiences from 33 women. I'm very
Yep.
curious if there are a handful of words that came up both on the supportive side and not so supportive side of those women.
I think there are a couple of themes that I can definitely mention. One is that I'm going to go to the very end one because the last chapter in the book is about success, and that's where I quote each of these women talking to their younger selves or their daughters. Success is an emotion for women.
Mm.
Success is not money, status, and power are okay, but most of them used a word to describe success that involved like freedom or flexibility or happiness or joy or something that had an emotion attached to it. And I think that's really important because when we talk about women being in careers, we talk about leadership as something that follows the old traditional rules of money, success, and power. And then we wonder why women don't want to take on leadership roles.
Yeah.
I mean, another is that the women who were told that they could be who they wanted to be succeeded when somebody stood up for them and helped them. They needed a role model or a mentor or somebody that didn't just say it was possible, but fought for them. And I think that's what happens in business and even entrepreneurship. You need somebody sometime to help you through the rough spots. Somebody that says like, here, I can introduce you to someone, or I can help you with this, or tell them to go fly a kite, they're wrong. And so that was a theme that came through. And then the other big one that came through was the importance of practice. One of the ladies, Kathy Sweet, called confidence a practice. And she said it was something that she would do on purpose. She would say, I don't have to go have this difficult conversation. I could delegate it, but I'm going to go do it so that I learn how to do it, so that when I have to have it, I'm confident I can do it.
Mm. Yeah.
And so the women who were on sports teams or swimming or anything like that that requires practice, band practice, they also learned that repeating something over and over and over didn't mean you'd failed the first, second, third, fourth, 50th time. It meant that you were learning to get better each and every time. And men innately have that in their upbringing because they're taught sports and stuff, at least in the
Hmm.
past. Women typically didn't have that. And that was definitely something that they saw as an advantage.
Yeah, totally see that. I love those insights. I'd love to hear about the how. How did you write this book? Tell me what that looked like, your process, habits.
So, because I was a medical writer, I had learned to write outlines because I had to do that to get client approval. So I sat down and I wrote this lovely outline of what my book was going to be and what it was going to cover. And then, because I was a medical writer, I went and found all the research for it and I put all that in the book and I justified everything that I was trying to communicate. And then I have always taken my work to editors and people to review because I had to be accurate in the work that I was doing. So I sent it to an editor that I met through my speaking program. And Jen had been a medical editor as well. She and I really hit it off. She goes, Vera, your background is showing through. She said, you are rationalizing everything with research. Women don't need the science. The science is out there. We need the emotion that tells us why something matters. So I came home, went through my notes, deleted 75% of it, cried for a week, and then started over.
I'm glad you got through it in just a week. Good for
Well, I
you though.
felt
You didn't let it stop you.
I think that I knew she was right. And what she highlighted for me, we talked about hiding earlier, what she highlighted for me is that I didn't trust my own instincts. I didn't believe that my word mattered. So I was hiding everything I wanted to say in research.
Yeah.
I was justifying who I was and what I believed in. So I knew I knew the content was correct because I had talked to so many people about it. And I thought, okay. So I phoned up some of the people I talked about and I said, can I interview you for my book? And then they would introduce me to someone else and someone else and someone else. And that's how I ended up talking to these 33 women. So I would sit down and I'd say, here's a thought. What do you think? And then they would tell me their stories. And sometimes it would make me change my mind about something, and sometimes it would confirm what I was going on. And that's how the book came together. So, like I said, it was a patchwork quilt because as I talked to these people, I had to change some things. I'm a posty girl, a sticky girl. So when I'm writing, my patio doors are covered in all these little stickies that say, okay, there's the chapter name, there's the quote for it, there's the key point, there's the story, there's the person I'm interviewing, and then I would move them all over the place until I knew where they belonged.
I love that. So was it challenging to switch gears from your conditioning and training from going from research to emotion? What did that look like?
It was really difficult, and I think that that was probably my personal growth challenge as much as anything,
Mhm.
because I no longer could hide what was important to me as an individual. And some of the stories that I included in my book are really, I had to really sit down and say, it's okay to show up. And how can I ask somebody else to show up if I'm not willing to show up?
Right.
So when I write about my nightmares or my car accidents and stuff like that, that was in there as partly to give me permission to believe that change was possible and that I had taken that next step to become my next best self so that I could let people know who read the book that, yeah, this is doable because I've just done it.
Yeah. Writing a book truly changes you. Did you have any idea that that's what was going to happen?
No, I say no because I thought I had gotten to that point in my life. I mean, been married and loving the best husband in the world. I got two great kids. We ran this business. Life was going well. And I thought, okay, I've just kind of achieved my pinnacle. I don't need to do anymore. And the book made me realize that I still had a lot of shields and facades and, yep, a lot of words that I shouldn't have been wearing.
Mm,
Um, and it made me realize that identity isn't fixed, which became something in the book that I hadn't put in there. Like I actually call it the identity ceiling and the fact that we actually stop ourselves from growing. And so my logo now is a triangle and it's an infinity because I believe that I use the model in my workshops: be, believe, become. Like who we are being, we need to be fully. We need to believe in our potential and our future. And we need to leave behind the old labels and the old beliefs to become who we are capable of. And as soon as we become that person, we're actually being the next level and we start all over again. And so for me, that was a huge awareness because it's always been, we're taught a destination. You're gonna achieve this goal. You're gonna go to school. You're gonna get your grades. You're gonna go to university. You're gonna get married. You're gonna have your kids. You're gonna have a business. You're gonna retire. You're gonna have grandkids. Blah 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 blah. Like there's steps that are set almost in stone, and we feel bad when we don't follow those steps. But they're not the right steps for everybody.
yeah.
And when we accept that and we sort of say, okay, does this fit me or not? Like you don't walk in, well, some of us do. We walk into a store and this is the fashion. You know, orange is the fashion this year. You need to buy orange. I look like crap in orange.
Me too.
Why would I buy orange?
Yep.
But that's what we do with life. It's like, okay, you're supposed to be this. You're supposed to be a stay-at-home mother. I wasn't a stay-at-home mother at the time. That was very scandalous. Those are the sorts of things that the analogy between words and clothes helps me to explain to women so much easier than talking about beliefs and biases and expectations, because we understand the emotion and the feeling way better than we understand the logic. And that's what my book taught me. My book taught me to listen to my body.
Mm, what a gift. I love that so much. I love taking a peek behind the scenes. What did the writing habit, your process, what did that look like? Like, how long did the draft take to come together? Did you write every day? Tell us about that.
I am a Gulf widow, so I am a Gulf writer. So my husband, As soon as the season starts, he's gone every Saturday and Sunday morning from about like 5 a.m. Well, as soon as the sun is up till noon. And so I gave myself permission not to clean house or bake or do any of those sorts of things. I would sit down with my laptop, my notebook, my muses, and I would write or I would draw or I would move post-its around. I live on a tidal river here, and then when the weather's beautiful, I go out there with my coffee or my tea or my blankets if I need them, and I let nature help me, go through because I will write on my laptop, but I edit on printed paper because that's the way I see it better.
Hmm.
And so I wrote my book on Saturday and Sunday mornings, sometimes Monday mornings if there were a holiday. And then I edited it in Hawaii when we were on vacation. I said to my husband, "You need to go play golf." And he goes, "I'm not going to abandon you in Hawaii." And I said, "I need to edit my book. You need to go play golf." He goes, "Okay, dear, I can do
Yeah, he's
that."
not going to argue. It's like, okay, bye.
So yeah, I call myself a golf writer.
I love that. And you have that perfect little container. A game
Yeah.
like 18 holes takes what, like 3 hours or so? I haven't golfed in a very long time.
Oh, he's gone for 5 hours.
Oh, wow, that's a huge chunk of time.
Yeah, and sometimes, like, I didn't necessarily write the whole time. Sometimes I would ponder something. Sometimes I'd say, I got to figure that out. I'd go do some research. I'd think, I read something about that. So I'd go pick up, The Artist's Way or somebody who I knew had written on that topic, and I'd go read that a little bit and say, oh, yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Or I'd go back to listen to the tapes of one of the interviews and think about how that reflected. So it wasn't just writing, writing, writing. And I'm also one of those, because of my background, I like to be really organized with where things are so that I can find them, even though my brain flips all over the place. So I write in Microsoft Word. And Microsoft Word, I know some people use Scrivener, but I could never figure that one out. Microsoft Word has this wonderful little thing called style sheets. And once you learn to format style sheets, you can set your whole book up in there. So you set like heading 2 is a chapter title, and heading 3 is a story title, and heading 4 is an illustration title or whatever. And then you do a table of contents.
Yeah.
And so if I'm looking for something and I want to move it, I just go find it in the table of contents, pick it up, move it, redo the table of contents.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that too. It's so much easier.
Oh, I love it. And so that's how I wrote the book. And I will tell you that it's probably 50% different order than what I thought it would be when I wrote my outline.
Yeah, that's typical. That happened to me too, and to my
Good.
clients. Which is fine. We think it's going to be one thing, and you don't know until you start writing.
And I think it's important we listen to that because when
Yes.
we force ourselves into that's why I don't like some of these writing programs that say, here's exactly what you do. It's like, I'm sorry, not everybody's the same. We don't all write the same way.
No, not at all. So actually, first I want to acknowledge something. I love that you had these 5-hour blocks of time, and they didn't necessarily have to be writing. So it sounds like
Yep.
they were activation times. Like you're going to spend 5 hours in, around, near your book. If writing happens, that's great.
Yep. If writing happens or learning happens or awareness happens or self-awareness, because some of those times are the times when I went, oh geez, you know, this is a belief I had that I have to think about because I can't write about it until I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah, very true. Were there parts of the writing or editing process you found particularly challenging?
I think, like I said, including personal stories, I wasn't going to,
Hmm.
but I had a couple of the editors I worked with said, you've got some powerful stories and people need to know that you're a human being too. So putting them in and coming to terms with the fact that all this hiding I'd done was now going to be out in a book that I couldn't withdraw. Yeah, that was hard.
Yeah, that is the thing that challenges most authors. Like, I am exposed, I am out there.
Yep. Yeah.
How was the process different? So you contributed stories to 2 other books. How did
Yeah.
you find that different? I mean, obviously, I'm guessing easier because it's a snippet and not a whole book. You don't have to worry about so many more things.
Yeah, the second one, the 262, that was relatively easy because there was a pretty good guideline in terms of what they wanted in that book, and some of it was just short bio as well. So that one wasn't too difficult. The first one that I'm in, the one with grief about you can, you will, I actually wrote a snippet in there on a very difficult part of my past that I was grieving about. That one was hard because it was so emotional, but I also knew that I had to do it. It was something that if I didn't deal with that, I couldn't move forward. So from an emotional point of view, it was difficult. From a publishing point of view and a writing point of view, it was very different because I think the thing with these co-op books is that you get assistance in putting together the topic that you're writing on, the communication. The editing component, I was very grateful that I'd studied editing because that was missing. And I understand it because in some cases they're trying to meet a lot of people to a very short deadline, and they also don't want to destroy the voice of the person. But when I read some of them, I thought, oh, if I was an editor, I would have just turned that into two sentences, or I would have put a paragraph break or something there. So I really think that even though they do say they provide some editing in the insight, that taking it to someone who will just give you a really good, at least a grammatic, well, probably now AI could do that, but
Yeah,
yeah, because when you see it out there, you're going like, this is me out there. I want to be the best me I can.
of course.
Yeah.
And now you're writing on Substack,
Yep.
Nearly Naked Truths.
Yep.
How do you like writing over there?
I really enjoyed it because it's basically my blog, and Nearly Naked is because, as I said, we live on a tidal river, and quite often when I got up in the morning and I had a shower or something, I'd get this idea and I would sit with my notebook in the windows with the sun on my back with just my towel wrapped around me and I'd write. And so when I started writing on Substack, it was just my blog as I always did. And then it was like, well, but you have to write themes and you need to, attract certain audiences and you need to do this and you need to do that. And I got caught up in this whole aspect of shoulds again, which I often say that my legacy in life would to get should banned from the dictionary.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Substack has changed, and I can't say I particularly like the here's how you make your Substack make money for you approach to it. So I made up my mind last week actually that I'm just going to go back to writing what I want to write,
Yep.
and sharing what I want to share and being me again, as opposed to trying to work with an algorithm.
Good. I'm definitely noticing that about Substack too, and really any algorithm.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking for readers, we need more people, more women writing what they want to write. I don't want to hear about how to work the Substack algorithm.
No,
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 no.
no, not at all. And I mean, I think the other thing that happens is when we write from our hearts and souls, we are sharing. And we don't we don't need to, I don't want to get on my high horse here. We don't need to have a huge following to have a huge impact.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So I think that's an important consideration.
Yep, I am totally with you there. I'm curious about your TED Talk. How was preparing for that different from writing?
Completely different. I would say when we write, we take a big idea and expand on it. And it kind of changes and gets bigger and then smaller and more clear along the way. With the TED Talk, it was like taking a big idea and making it smaller and smaller and smaller. And I don't mean making the idea smaller, but making the words surrounding it and the clarity. Like the TED Talk is about absolute clarity and engagement. Like it's like nonstop engagement. There's no room to build, well, there is room to build tension and tempo, but it's not like we can with a book where you can draw it out and you can provide lots of detail and lots of background. It's every single word counts, every pause counts, every step you make on the stage counts. It was hard.
Yeah. I bet. I've
Yeah, I
watched the
don't.
TED Talk and I enjoyed it, and I can see how much goes into it. And you're right. Even if you've spoken any room and you lead workshops, so you're
Yeah.
used to it. When you have an audience that you engage with, it's a little different than a
Oh,
TED
yeah.
Talk, of course.
When you have an audience that you're engaging with, it makes such a difference because, but at least the way I work is I actually prefer workshops to speeches, although I'll do both. But the workshops allow you to read the body language and see somebody's response and know whether they're hopefully not triggered, but whether they're responding positively or whether they're curious or whether they're confused. And you can adapt. When you're doing this little, ours was a 10-minute talk. When you're doing a 10-minute talk, you don't have much time for much except for trying to remember the sequence of what you're talking about. And the other problem is you're on this tiny little dot, so you can't use mobility or motion in major ways to communicate either. So it was a completely different exercise, a very good exercise on clarity, though, I will say.
Yeah, I bet. Do you have other books in you?
I'm working on three, four, five.
Of
Yeah.
course. No one just has one project on the go. That's boring.
I'm doing a compilation of nearly naked truths, some of my old blogs. I've been blogging for 4 or 5 years, and then I have like 6 boxes of journals. So I'm working on a compilation of that. I'm working on a memoir because I have a rather, as my husband says, a roller coaster life. So and that's mostly for my kids, although I think it will obviously go further than that. Working on a workbook for Wordz. I'm working on a sequel to Wordz on the identity sealing. And then I'm working on one for my kids who are adults, but just one that's kind of things I remember about them that I love about them that I want them to know.
Aw, I love that, and I love all those projects.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I'm excited to read more from you. One
Thank
final
you.
question to wrap us up. We will, of course, link to all the good stuff, your website, your LinkedIn, Substack, your book. When you are writing, do you have something that you just love to sip? I know you mentioned coffee or tea, but what are you drinking?
I start my morning with coffee and my journal. That's one thing that's a routine. I drink black tea after that, and then I switch to chai tea, and then I go to Earl Grey, and then I go to green tea, and then I go to herbal tea, and then I go to sparkling waters.
Wow, you go through a lot of tea.
I go through a lot of tea, a lot of water. I run to the bathroom a lot, but I sometimes think that that's when when I break out of the ruts and think, am I going in the right direction or not? So yeah.
That's when the best ideas happen. We need to move our bodies too, and not just as much as we
Yeah.
love sitting and writing, we do need to move. So drinking a lot of
Yeah.
fluid certainly helps
Yeah.
with that.
Exactly.
I love that, Vera. Thank you so much for being here. This is such a joy. I
Thank
truly
you.
appreciate everything you shared with us. Thank you.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it too.